Hey everyone. Excited to have Cam Perry here this week. He is the host of Between Two Divs podcast, tech podcast out of Oklahoma, and he's kind of just a growing voice in the tech community and the Black tech community. So I'm stoked to have him on here just to talk about all this stuff we got in common. So, what's up, Cam? How are you doing?
Hey, Austin, man. I'm glad we finally get a chance to chat. I'm really excited to talk about my podcast and what I got going on, man. It's gonna be
Yeah,
fun, man.
yeah, you're doing a lot. Most recently, you were announcing that you're kind of making, what is it, like a dev, like a junior developer, almost like a competition or
Yeah,
a
like a
community.
reality show. That's like my big project that I'm doing. Like this is something that I tell people all the time. Like this is like my everything I've done up to this point, my life's work, all into one show that I'm creating for junior developers because I
Mhm.
see a lot of people, having trouble finding their first job. And this whole point of my show, and we'll talk about this later,
Yeah,
is to help people, get that job. And hopefully it'll change people's lives too at the same time.
yeah, no, that's really cool. And I'm kind of surprised there hasn't been a show like that because the even though tech is still underrated in a lot of ways because there's a lot of need for more people to get into it. And that's not just programming, that's like everything adjacent to the tech industry. There's all this need, but there's also like all this interest online. I'm kind of surprised there hasn't been, yeah, a reality show or something like that where, yeah, especially for like people love to watch, juniors or people who are trying to learn the craft, like try and make it. Like people love that stuff. And it's inspiring. It's cool.
Yeah, yeah, man. I think probably the reason why that probably hasn't is I feel like a lot of times people like the most simple things aren't done. Like you look at for instance like Redbox for instance, like they started something years ago that kind of took Redbox and also Blockbuster. Blockbuster was like the biggest thing back in the day. I think Redbox and Netflix took Blockbuster out of business, in my
Yeah.
personal opinion, because definitely Netflix, but Redbox I think they did too. Because the Redbox was like something where it was like wasn't really that unique, but I feel like just that idea of being having something that's convenient that people can get a DVD or something like that, rent a movie. I think now they have like games you can rent as well, and it just was something that was just way cheaper than going to say your local Blockbuster, doing the same thing, having to worry about the cancellation fees and all this different stuff. And people love convenience, and if you can create something that makes people's lives easier, like people love that stuff, and that's why anytime I have a chance to think of an idea or something that makes people's lives easier or helps people, which you already can relate to as well as developers or problem solvers. We're people that we have to solve problems, and if you can solve someone's problems, you can make a lot of money doing whatever you come up with because there's always a need for it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, there's a lot there, and I just love that you're highlighting it's about solving real problems that people have
Hmm.
and building things up better. And for me, this has been something that's been a real shift since kind of just getting into the whole tech world and becoming a developer and leaning into that whole culture is that it's like, wow, wealth building is supposed to be about making people's lives better. Like wealth building is supposed to be about productivity and building like people up, building societies up. And like um, that's what I want to support. That's what I want to be a part of. And that's kind of like an idea that I wish people would, resonate with again, because it's kind of gone out of vogue a little bit. But nonetheless, like I'm excited to see what comes from your reality show, and especially coming from the Midwest. Like the Midwest is underrated, right? Especially in the tech world. And
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
you're in
for sure.
Oklahoma City, right?
Yeah, Oklahoma City. Yeah, like that's honestly that's one of the reasons why I even started it too, because I saw no offense people in Oklahoma that are listening to this, but they are. Um I think the tech scene in Oklahoma is growing, but it's so behind as far as where a lot of places are. where they're not really like trying to hire juniors like specifically, like like some places like they take initiatives where they're like, okay, let's try to get these talented people that maybe are just coming out of a boot camp or coming out of college, and let's help them, with their careers and stuff. Where you'll see a lot of mid-level and senior positions, but not a whole lot of juniors. And I think with
Yeah.
this competition, I'm trying to showcase that talent so the employers can look at it and be like, hey man, this person has just as much skill as a mid-level guy. Let's hire this guy
Mhm.
or girl, whoever it is, right? So I think what people are gonna realize in the show, it's called the Hackspot for people that want to check it out. They're gonna
Yeah.
not realize how much exposure they're gonna get. Like, cause I always tell people like, hey man, even if you don't got any like hardly any experience, just apply on the show. I'm telling you, you're gonna get way more out of this than probably anything you're gonna do. Even if you go to a boot camp, I guarantee this is gonna be something that's even more incredible than that because you're gonna have judges that will be able to tell you real feedback and you'll know exactly where you're at. Because some people they apply to a bunch of jobs, don't
Mhm.
get no response, and they don't know why they're not getting responses or why
Yeah.
they're barely getting callbacks, right? So this you would know for a fact where you're at and why you're either getting callbacks or why you're not getting callbacks. And hopefully someone who's watching or one of the judges may offer you a job. Like that's kind of the goal with it is to get people jobs. And maybe not season one, but hopefully down the road I want to have a way where like maybe the grand prize is to offer someone a paid internship, right? Because
Mhm.
if you offer someone like that, something crazy like that, you can probably get like my emails are probably flooded, like just because
Yeah.
people be like, "Hey, man," like because it makes no sense not to try it out if you can guarantee someone something like that because people are always trying to find a job, and if you can offer someone a 1 month, 2 month contract for them to kind of try this person out, that's money that they can put in their pocket. They don't have to stress about it, and if they're good, they're gonna obviously get extended a contract, after that. So or an actual full time role. So that's kind of the goal with the whole competition is to make sure that we help people get that first foray into tech and
Yeah.
be set up for the future, man.
No, and that's awesome because it's the junior positions that are open, that that's almost a sign of wealth, I think, is like whenever the company is like opening up to more junior positions and willing to accept people, that means that they have the money, the extra resources and the trust to like invest in people. And then for the people trying to get a job, that's just represents opportunity
Yep.
where it's like a lot of people think they could never have a good paying job or never get into the biggest growing industry, but it's like you really can. Like you've been through Lambda, and so you've seen like so many examples of people who really thought they couldn't and had all sorts of blockers and life issues and things going to the way, but they made it nonetheless. But it's like, yeah, when you're in Oklahoma, it's all the more difficult. Like
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
here in Salt Lake City, and I'm happy to have like my first job in tech, but I applied for every available position in Oklahoma just about, and there was no more, so I started applying out of state. So like I couldn't even stay in my own state to get my first job. And so it's like that's a shame because there's a lot of talent in Oklahoma, and there's just people that deserve to be able to get a good paying job.
Yeah, that's one thing I will tell people that are listening is like if you're in a market kind of like what we're talking about, apply out of state. Don't like just apply in your state because if you're not getting responses
Yeah.
back, it may not be just because you don't have a good enough portfolio or nothing like that. Like I said, there's so many variables behind it. Like last year, the pandemic, like it was like people just weren't hiring people. But this year, it's more so like maybe you're in a market where maybe they're not looking for juniors right now or something like that. Apply at other places because there's someone that will hire you. Like
Hmm.
if you have the skills, like so don't limit yourself in one box. If you apply in a state where either they don't have a whole lot of jobs or not hiring a little bunch of juniors, you may only apply at like maybe 20, 30 jobs a month, which that's hardly anything because you're probably gonna maybe if you're lucky, maybe get 2 or 3 responses from that. So what you want to do is just apply to everywhere you can, remote, not remote, like just apply, apply, apply because you're gonna get something. It may take you a month, 2 months, maybe 3 months, but if you just put in the work and apply and improve your resume if you need to improve your resume, improve your portfolio if you need to improve your portfolio, improve your interview skills if you need to improve your interview skills. Because I tell people, hey, even if it's a job where you need 5 years experience, you don't think you're gonna get the job, but you get an interview, take the interview because the interview is gonna help you at another job in opportunity down the road,
Yeah.
or you never know, they may hire you because sometimes they have all these different requirements, but they may love what you brought to the table. Because I know a friend personally, they didn't know almost any of the things that they asked for, but they hired them because they just were that skilled and that talented, and they could trust them for them to be able to learn whatever technology they needed to learn. So don't be scared of that stuff. Just kind of just apply anything that you think that's interesting that you could do. Just do it, man.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it takes, yeah, it takes a while. For some people, it took me a while. And like you're talking about, where you don't get feedback, you're sending it off, and maybe you're making more projects, maybe you're like iterating on, your resume or what you're sending out, but it can be tough. And like that's where the tech community is so awesome, because there's always people you can reach out to. And really, you can reach out to some of the biggest figures in the space, and get responses a lot of time, if you're just looking for feedback on projects, or like, hey, what should I learn next, what should I do, can I have a practice interview. Like, I've never had so many random interactions with people who were just nice and wanted to help me, than when I got into tech and started just kind of shouting out into the void that, hey, I'm into this, I'm trying to connect with people, I'm trying to get something going, I'm trying to learn. And it's just the world gets back to you, especially it's about tech right now. Like, we're really we're booming in a lot of ways. And so that's what's good, but you got to reach out and ask. um, and so, yeah, but it's good that people like you are out there, especially in Oklahoma, kind of just making noise, and letting people know, like, hey, there's opportunity in tech, um, even if you don't come from a traditional background.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like because I always anything I do, like I always think, man, like what would I do if I was in that position? So I'm always thinking that way. Like even if it's something that I'm not going to see the immediate results right away, because like I think sometimes people get caught up in like, man, what? And I know we talked about this before air as well. Man, what if I'm not getting the amount of responses I want right now? Or maybe
Mm.
if people are even listening to what I got to say, and it's always someone's listening to what you got to say. Like even if they're not commenting on your post or giving you feedback when you're talking about something, there's always a couple of people that are listening to everything you say. That's why you got to be careful too, because what if you say, is dangerous in a way, because if someone could be thinking that what you're saying is the gospel, and if you say something that's bad advice for people, because I know all the time I see people give bad advice. They're talking about, you know, you shouldn't apply for jobs that aren't junior, or you should make sure your portfolio is perfect before you start applying for jobs. And I'm like, man, like, no, 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 don't do none of that stuff they tell you, just apply for jobs when you start building projects. Like even if you're not ready, just apply for jobs, because like I mentioned before, it takes a while to get your interview skills to a level where you feel comfortable. Because I've lost job opportunities because I had bad interviews, and I'm like, man, I look back and I'm like, man, if I would have just practiced or had more interviews beforehand, I probably would have got this job. Because and that'd be stuff that even now, see, there's some interviews that I have that I'm like, I look back on and I'm like, man, I should have did this instead of this. Because sometimes you'll think of stuff after the interview and you probably feel the same way. You'll be like, man, maybe I didn't really have something that's deployed right away, but I could have screen shared if I like on a Zoom or somewhere on Google Meets or whatever it is. And now, the interviews are remote anyways. You can show them exactly what you're working on right now
Mhm.
and say, okay, this is what I'm working on. This is what I'm kind of trying to do with this. This is a design that I'm kind of working with, and then they can kind of see, okay, this is the guy's thought process behind it. Because I think if you kind of think outside the box and you do interviews and you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you, it'll set you up a lot better, as opposed to you kind of just thinking, oh, I always got to have deployed projects to show. No, you don't always have to have that. Some projects you won't have deployed, because you're working on it actively. But if you can show them kind of what you're doing, they kind of see, okay, this guy's working with something. Maybe he got deployed project, but also he's working on active stuff as well. Because I know if you work with Shopify, I don't know if you ever mess with Shopify or not, but a lot of times you won't have access, of the actual project unless you have the password for it. So sometimes you can't like
Yeah.
just show people like the deployed stuff, just like off of like a website. So sometimes you have to like show them, okay, this is what I'm actually doing with this because it's not actually put all the way up there yet. So that's a couple things I'd recommend people if they're listening at home. If you're worried about if you got to have all deployed stuff, or if you got to do stuff a certain way. There really isn't a certain way you got to do stuff. Just find something that works for you, and just do it. That's what I tell people all the time.
Yeah. And this goes outside of even tech as well. Like almost any kind of job, if you can show them that you're doing projects or something outside of that are just extracurricular, or that you decided to do on your own, like that shows so much ownership and like accountability. And I've heard of a lot of people who've gotten opportunities exactly because of extra projects, not because of the things we traditionally think of, which is like school, which is education. And but yeah, no, it's a confusing world. There's a lot of counterintuitive advice and people just saying stuff. So it's definitely weird to get into, but that's why it's cool. That's why I like your podcast. Like it's an easy one that I could point a lot of people to and just be like, yo, just listen to this. Like you're gonna get good advice. And plus your podcast, it's kind of shorter. Like ours can be really long. Some of our episodes are like 2.5 hours long, right? But yours is like it's like half an hour to 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
There's really good interviews, really concise. And so I mean I love that format. Um, but yeah, like on the podcast, you started at the beginning of 2020, right?
Yeah, beginning of 2020, correct. Yeah.
Nice. So that's been pretty consistent. You're like a year and a half in.
Yeah, yeah. Like I know we talked about this
Crazy.
before as well. Yeah, like man, like I never thought I would be still doing this podcast, like even now, to be honest with you, because I know we talked about this as well, and I was saying that man, like I had a podcast before years ago, and I quit because I just wasn't seeing the results that I wanted to see,
Yeah.
and a
What
lot of
was
times
that
people.
podcast about tech?
No, it wasn't about tech. It was like sports. So, sports is
Okay.
like there's like a million people doing sports podcasts too. I think that was
Yeah.
part of it as well. It's just like I was like, man, I'm not really interested in doing something that like everybody's doing because it's like I don't know how many sports podcasts there are, but there's probably
Yeah.
millions of them. So I
Probably
was
a
like,
third of
man,
all podcasts are sports podcasts
yeah,
or
yeah.
something.
So I was like, man, and I think I saw Joe Rogan like how he was doing and Joe Button like now his podcast is going down, but at the time like he was one of the top podcasters as well. And I was like, man, these people are making a lot of money doing podcasting, and I'm not thinking about the money, like almost never thinking about the money, but the money will help me do other things. That's why I always tell people like, hey, like you shouldn't like have love money to a point where like dictates every decision you make, but you should like think of it as like a vehicle to get to where you want to be. So maybe you're a developer, right? And like maybe down the road you want to be like a musician or you want to be a rapper or something like that, and those things. I mean, you're probably not gonna be successful just off that stuff off rip because there's only a handful of people that are superstars in the industry at a time. So
Yeah.
maybe you have a hobby that you want to do but you could never do. Maybe instead of focus on that, you be a web developer, and then down the road you can focus on putting some of the money to actually putting an album out and stuff like that, and enjoy your life. So I tell people all the time like if you have something that you're really talented with, circle back to it. Like maybe, instead of, being a rapper or a singer or something like that, maybe you want to create an app for singers or rappers or something. Like there's so many different ideas that I think aren't being explored yet that are simple, like I mentioned before, that people should kind of think about because if you can create something that solves a problem, like I would say this over and over again, like you can make a lot of money. Like there's like simple stuff that people think is like mad complex, or you got to have a mad complex idea. Look at, for instance, look at Snapchat or Instagram, like Instagram specifically. Like when it first started, it was a simple app. Like it wasn't nothing crazy like how it is now. Now you got all these different features. Like some people also like they think that you gotta have some like really really great app to start. Like just have one great feature that people love, and then just build from there. Like you don't have to be perfect. And this is an advice in life in general. Nothing you do, any ideas you implement, don't have to be perfect right away. Just execute, execute. I tell people all the time, like if you have a good idea, just do it, because if it's a good enough idea, it's gonna catch on. But you don't want to wait 2 or 3 years down the road and someone comes up with the same idea that you thought of, and they make millions, maybe billions of dollars, and you think to your head, man, if I should have did it, I had the same exact idea. There's always someone. I'm sure you see it on your timeline as well. Every once in a while, you got that one person that will tell you that, man, I could have created the next Snapchat. I could have created the next Clubhouse. I could have created the next, I don't know what the other apps they got out then that are real popular. Musically, I think was popular, but then they changed from Musically to TikTok because people don't know about. People thought TikTok was like a overnight thing, but TikTok's been around for years.
Yeah.
Like I remember Gary Vee was talking about Musically like 6 7 years ago. I remember, and I didn't look into it back then. I thought, man, this is for kids. And if I would have looked into it when Gary Vee was talking about it, man, you and I probably wouldn't even be talking right now, to be honest. But it's something that I research apps all the time. I see stuff and I'm like, man, the trends, man. Like I wish I would have did this, wish I did that. But you can't really regret that stuff. But you just got to just do stuff. If you have a good idea or something that you think will help you in your career, just do it. Don't think about it. Just do it.
Yeah. No, totally. And something I'm really into and that actually got me into tech is Bitcoin. So I have those kinds of thoughts all the time where I'm like, oh, just a year earlier, just 2 years earlier, and I would be worth, three more zeros or whatever. But, it's not about that. It's about building for the long term. And I like how you mentioned about like looping back around. It's for a lot of people, I think they repel away when they hear something like that like, hey, maybe that thing that you're certain you should do, like maybe this isn't the right time, this isn't the right place. And like maybe you really should loop it back around or pivot to something else, however you want to frame that. But like for me, I've played music most of my like teens and adult life. And that was everything that kind of made up my identity and what I thought I would do, and didn't consider very much outside of it. And and that was before I started this whole journey, kind of learning about tech, and now going to Lambda school, getting my first job. But it's like for me, it still feels just as close to me, and I still have like the same desires, same plans. And like I know that now I actually have more capability, or at least different options in how I can engage with it, because I can go get a job in any big city, for example. Now that I have like my foot in the door in the tech community, I can likely get a good paying job anywhere else, where that opens up opportunities where before that I was working in food service my whole life. And so it was like a very different paradigm of opportunities you have. And so it's just it's something to consider, it's something to think about, but it's a paradox as well, because it's like sometimes you got to do the not the opposite, but you got to go a different way in order to do the thing that you really want to do, in order to come back around on the end. Um, and for the biggest and most important things, that's how it works a lot of times. Like the biggest projects, the most important ones, they're over the 10 years, like you're saying with Musically, um, or any big app, any big company, big project. Uh, but I want people to have the opportunity to do whatever that thing is that they're obsessed with, that they're good at, that they love. And it seems like tech really is a gateway for that in a lot of ways, which is why I'm talking about it more and more, and like kind of encouraging more of my friends. But also just everything on the internet, podcasting, reaching out to people, like this is all these are levers that you can pull on. and you can like get your message out into the void, and people will respond back. It's really amazing. Like, the first thing I asked you when I DM'd you, um, was when I was asking you to be on the podcast. I was like, hey, how are you getting guests? Like, how do you keep on finding guests? How do you get them to come on? And you told me, just ask, just ask straight up. And it's funny. It's like, I knew you would say that, but I had to ask anyway. I had to just ask.
Yep.
And it's funny. I'm not good at that stuff. I'm like having to learn how to do that. Um, but I'm being more and more affirmed as I get to meet cool people like you when I do reach out.
Yeah, man. That's a good point you made, because like I feel like I take it for granted how easy it is for me to do it. Like, cause I honestly like what I do, and I'll tell people like my secret how I do it. Cause it's not nothing crazy, nothing complex how I do it. But like I'll see someone that does something cool on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook, whatever it is. It don't really matter the platform. But I'll see someone do something cool, and I'll start like having conversation with them. And then if I see, and sometimes like I think I learned this kind of the hard way early on, is like before I would just reach out to people, I didn't really vet them first. And sometimes you don't vet people. You get these awkward, weird interviews where you'll bring up a topic. Cause like my podcast, if people haven't heard my podcast, I talk about just really everything. Like I really don't have like one topic I just don't talk about. So like I think right around like the election was going on, I mentioned something about Trump or whatever, and I shouldn't have mentioned it. Like, cause I knew once I mentioned it, like the floodgates open. Like because I like to play devil's advocate. Like I don't like to have a podcast where we both agree on everything. Cause I think I got to talk to the people on both sides, right? So I mentioned something about the topic, and it went completely left. Like they were attacking me, and I was like, okay, like I'm not gonna interview people anymore if they're gonna have an opinion that's like they get mad at me or what I'm saying, because it's not what I think. It's just what I'm just thinking of what some of the viewers are probably thinking too, because like any TV show you watch, any debate show, you got to have both sides, because there's people that for a fact that they don't agree with what they're saying, but they got to say it because it's boring TV if you only have one side of the argument, but you don't have the other side, right? Because there's
Yeah,
always someone that thinks
you're
the other
just doing
side.
it due diligence. You're just presenting the other side, like, hey, this is what other people would say, just to bring that up, just to not have it be totally one-sided. No, I appreciate that. That's
Yeah,
kind of
man. Like
it's kind of crazy though. Like you got like straight up attacked.
I straight attack. I didn't even put the episode out. That's how bad it was. It was bad.
Dang.
Like I told my friend like not years ago, but like last year when it happened, I was like, man, like you won't believe what happened. And I said, man, I got attacked, and it was crazy. Like they even sent me emails, like give me like information about what I was saying. I'm like, hey, that's crazy. You're throwing emails at my face, when we're having an interview during the interview, by the way. So I was like, okay, like I ain't putting this episode out just because the fact that you shouldn't attack me when you're the one that asked me for the interview, and I'm being nice and letting you have a platform where you can speak on your piece, and you're attacking me. So like then after that, I just like, okay, let me make sure these people are legit cool people. They aren't going to attack me. Don't care about my opinion because it's my opinion, and and we can have a good conversation, good dialogue, because I think and I kind of feel bad for the viewers because like I feel like there was a lot of stuff that was said that was good, but it was just 30 minutes of just being attacked, and I was like, okay, like let me just go ahead and kind of focus on having better interviews that doesn't set me up for that same situation in the future. So now, like I said, I kind of like try to have introductory calls with people if I don't really know them. If I know them and I know kind of what their personality is, and I'm like, okay, let me get on my show. But if I don't know them and they're kind of some random person that hits me up, I'm like, okay, let's have an introductory call, get to know the people, make sure they're good, and if they're good, let's have a chat. Because I think what I really appreciate with my podcast is almost every episode is different. I don't think I have a bunch of episodes where the content is the same, which I think separates me from a lot of other podcasts, a lot of other tech podcasts out there. Because I think I had an interview with someone a while back for a job, and they told me, they said, hey man, I checked your podcast. And I think that always throws me off because
Yeah.
one of my portfolio projects is I talk about my podcast and stuff, and people would say, "Man, I check your podcast. I like the content, I like the material," and I'm like, and it's easy. And I tell people all the time, like, have portfolio projects that you enjoy that you can talk for 15, 20 minutes a piece on, because I think it makes your life a lot easier as opposed to doing like a bunch of Udemy projects. Nothing wrong with the Udemy projects, by the way. But if you're not interested in what you're building, how are you going to be interested in interview unless you're just naturally a good speaker? If you're not a naturally good speaker, do stuff that you really like, because if you really like what you're doing, you're going to be able to talk about it, because it's fun. It's something that you really love, as opposed to something that you're kind of having to drag your feet. So that's another advice I give people is do fun projects. You don't have to have a whole bunch of projects, by the way, because I think some people get caught up in you got to have 5, 6, 7 projects. But if you have 2 or 3 great projects, you can get a job today. Like, I guarantee you, because there's people I've seen have maybe one great project, a bunch of so-so projects. Sometimes they don't even have one really good project. They just have one project that really is good for what they're applying for, and they
Mhm.
get a job too. So, you don't have to have a whole bunch of projects. Just like I said before, like, just apply. Have a couple of really good ones that you can talk about for a while, for the whole 30 minutes or 45 minutes, however long the interview is. And like I said, it'll make your life a lot easier, as opposed to just doing projects that you maybe see everybody doing. Because I think right now blockchain is really cool, Shopify is really cool. So if you can do projects like that are related to those particular industries, like, it separates you from the pack, because you kind of want to do stuff that's different from what everyone else is doing. Because I always think, like, what are the other candidates doing, and what am I doing that's different from them? If I can showcase something that's different from what they're doing, I'm gonna at least get another interview. I may not get the job, but I'm gonna at least get that call back, that second interview, as opposed to someone else that may be showing them what they've already seen before. Because you kind of want to just be unique and different, like I mentioned earlier, and separate yourself, do something that's outside the box, because, like, stuff like that really matters.
Yeah. No, cool. I really love is escape competition through authenticity. And that's basically just saying exactly what you are, is just you separate yourself by your own uniqueness. Like, everyone is unique. You don't, in a sense, you don't even have to try. Like, it's already there. You just got to find how to tap into it, how to leverage it, and bring it into whatever real world thing that you're interacting with, and show people. And yeah, it's one of the most intimidating things, but it's one of the most valuable things in life. And like, yeah, I've always been driven to do projects, and uh, when I was young, got feedback, like good feedback, that I did them, and I'm thankful for that. I'm super thankful for that, because it's made it to where it's kind of natural for me. But I know for a lot of people, they have those fears, um, and the same thing with talking. I would guess you're probably the same way. You've just like naturally always talk to people a lot. Maybe it's more of a natural thing, but I don't know. That's how it is for me. And so, but I noticed in Lambda school, alongside all of my peers, when it came to the interview side of things, like, that's where a lot of them fell apart, or just anything to do with talking,
Yeah.
even amongst a small group of just 8 people who are all peers, like some people would just really, really scare them to be in that situation. And those, man, those are some of the most golden opportunities, and some of the most important places to lean in. And especially nowadays, because of the leverage it gives you, just communicating with people gives you so much leverage.
Yeah,
uh
man. Yeah, man. Like, actually, I'm gonna go back to your point about the communication skills, and like me
yeah.
naturally being a good communicator. So, like, believe it or not, probably about 3 years ago, I was horrible at communicating with people. Like,
Yeah.
if you watch my old YouTube videos, you can even see this. Like, I had a real bad stuttering problem. Like, I
Mhm.
wouldn't ever look at the camera. Like, I was a mess, man. Like, if you look at my stuff I'm doing now compared to back then, it's like night and day. Like, so I always tell people, like, you can get better, like, if you're bad at whatever you're doing. Like, and now, like, people don't even believe it. Like, if I have friends that will tell me, like, man, like, you must be an extrovert. I'm like, nah, I'm an introvert. I'm not an expert at all.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like kind of in that weird spectrum where I'm kind of like maybe closer in the middle than most people. So sometimes, depending on who I'm talking to, it seems like I'm an extrovert, but I'm really not, because there's some people that like it really scares me to have a long conversation with them, because like they maybe they're someone that's a big wig or someone that's like, but I have to remind myself I gotta put myself out there. I gotta, even if they're gonna make fun of me or think my idea is stupid, like I gotta just talk to them. I may not love it. It may take a lot of energy out of me, but that could be the $1 million opportunity for me. Because I always tell people, you never know what that $1 million opportunity is, because everyone has a moment in their life where they can potentially make $1 million. Will you make the $1 million? Who knows? Because sometimes you have an opportunity that comes in your life, you don't realize it's an opportunity, and you miss it. And
Mhm.
everybody has at least one chance. Everybody does. Like it don't matter what you do. There's always that one moment, unless you chronically sick or something. But everyone who's healthy has an opportunity to make $1 million. And I'm always thinking about what is that opportunity that's going to get me to that point. Because I think once you get to that point, your life changed, because you're able to make that generational wealth that we talked about earlier, and be able to provide for your family, or do things you always wanted to do. And like I mentioned also as well, is you want to make money to be able to do things you always want to do, and be a vehicle to other things, because we all have other passions. Most of us are not trying to be developers our whole lives, at least not me. I don't know about you, but I'm trying to focus more on to build my media company and building the media brand, which is Between Two Dibs is the podcast that starts it. Then I got my show I'm working on, and then trying to do some other stuff that's cool, that's focused for developers. But I just want to be that person where I can help people that maybe never would have got that opportunity. Because I think the other day I was talking about this as well. Is I want to hire a bunch of Black people in tech at my company and stuff, because we're not getting the same opportunities. But women is another group of people that aren't getting the same opportunities that other groups of people are getting. And people are kind of scared to talk about this, but it's true. It's like
Yeah.
they just call a spade here. Like I think some people are scared to talk about that because they're afraid of losing their jobs or losing endorsements and stuff like that. But I'm at the point where I'm my own boss right now, so I can
Yeah.
kind of say these things. But some people, I talk to people all the time that they can't get on my podcast because they can't talk about how they're being misrepresented, or they can't talk about Black Lives Matter when that was going on. They can't talk about the shootings that are going on. And I'm like, man, I could never work for someone that kind of limits my voice, because I've had interviews all the time that there'd be people that be like, you can't post stuff on social media, or you can't post these particular things on social media. I'm like, okay, like let me just end this interview right now, because I don't think it's going to work for either one of us, because I don't want to sacrifice.
But you've had people tell you that in interviews?
Yes, I
Like they
have.
looked at
I
your
have.
Twitter or something beforehand?
Yeah, yeah. I've had interviews where they literally have
Oh,
said those things to me, which is crazy. Like, and
yeah.
even had obviously had people that I've tried to interview that told me the same thing. But it's crazy when you and I probably shouldn't even say this, but I'm gonna say it to listeners anyway, just because like I'm not really scared about the consequences, because I think it's important to bring up these topics, because it's very important. Because you don't want to sacrifice the money for your freedom, and because there's always going to be another job out there that doesn't limit you. So even if you got to apply for another month or so, it's going to be worth it. I'm telling you, like you're not going to like that job. I don't care how
Yeah.
much money they're offering you. Just don't take it.
No, yeah. And everyone has their own values and they have certain things that like they won't compromise on. And like what you're just saying is like I should be able to speak up about this stuff, like, and not have to think second thought about my employer or anything like that. And that's, I think everyone should have that kind of freedom. And it bothers me now how much, yeah, the companies are getting involved in that stuff. Like that's not cool. And like something for me, I'm really passionate about data privacy and owning your own data
Yep.
and surveillance. And so when I was applying to jobs, like I built projects kind of around this stuff. Like I built a project that helps you get your Facebook data back and shows you everything that they collect. And so I had certain values. I was like, I'm not going to work for a company that just like harvests people's data, and I'm not going to ever feel threatened because I talk about this stuff very upfront and I say what it is, it's surveillance and it's stealing and selling people's data, and it's wrong. And I'm glad, like, the company I'm at now, like, it's totally separate from my personal life. They don't care about that, and I don't have to do any of that. Thank goodness. But it's always, yeah, like, you don't want to give away your freedom. Like, that's not what it's about, and that's like totally what I'm against. So I definitely not what I'm saying when I like encourage people to look into tech. but but no, I mean, with what you're talking about with like the opportunities, the differences of opportunities between, like people of color and women, like technology and engineering, they've always been that like high echelon that were most guarded, most protected. And now there's a whole new boom happening of all this diversity coming into tech, and it's really amazing to see. um I don't know, like, what do you think about what's happening right now in tech? Is that kind of how you see it?
Yeah, yeah. So like I think like and I agree with you. Like I think if I never was on Twitter and I was just like in my state and just going to meetups and stuff, right?
Yeah,
I probably would have a completely different opinion, be honest with you, just because like I know, and I say this all the time when I go to meetups as well, is like, man, like especially when there's like a bunch of my own people that are at these meetups, I tell them, I say, hey man, like normally I go to meetups and I'm the only black guy that's at these meetups, and it's always depressing to me because like I feel like you can tell when people are interested in you and when they're not, because I don't like just having talk with people that I could tell that like you hand the business card and they're gonna throw it in the trash like in 5 seconds.
yeah,
So I'm like, man, like I like to talk to people that I can relate to. And a lot of times I talk to people like that are not, the same skin color as me. Sometimes, I have genuine connections, but a lot of times like they don't remember me. Like, I'll see them the next meetup or next place that I see them at. And I say, hey, just to kind of see if they remember me. And then usually they don't say nothing. So I'm like, okay, they don't remember me. I know a lot of people, they meet a lot of people, but I'm the type of guy where if I see someone's face, I'll remember them. Like it
yeah,
don't matter who it is. I may not remember their name unless I had a good conversation with them, but I'll at least remember their face because I'm bad with names, by the way. So I'll be like, hey, I saw you at the last event, just kind of, kind of jog the memory if maybe they don't remember where they saw me at.
mhm,
And a lot of times, if it's someone I really want to connect with, and I see them like maybe a couple times already, and I think that there's something that maybe I could do that could help them because I'm like I said, I'm always big on trying to help people. If I can help someone, even if they're a CEO of a company, I'm gonna put myself out there. Like, and this is something that y'all got to do too. Don't always think you got to just apply for jobs on Indeed, LinkedIn, whatever. I think there's a study that says most people that get tech jobs get them from referrals. They don't get them from Indeed or LinkedIn or not LinkedIn, but what's it, ZipRecruiter or what's
yeah.
the other job?
Glassdoor.
Glassdoor, yeah, those places. A lot of times they don't get from those places. A lot of times they get them from referrals from like LinkedIn or meetups or Twitter, stuff like that. Because a lot of the most important jobs, a lot of the most high paying jobs, they're not posted on those sites. They're posted, from people, looking for good people, by the way. And a lot of times you'll get an interview just out the referral alone. Like you don't even have to do much work. Like you could have a crappy portfolio, but if you have a good referral that can vouch for you, like you're gonna get that for that first interview, and then they're gonna be able to kind of see, okay, can this guy do something for my company? Or like I mentioned, what you should do if you can't get referrals like from people that just know who you are and refer you, reach out to CEOs, CTOs of companies on LinkedIn and offer to have like a coffee with them or lunch or something like that. You pay for the lunch, pay for the coffee, whatever, right? It may cost you, $5 to $10, but I guarantee you're gonna get at least 3 to 5 interviews that way. I guarantee it. Like just because people like Austin said, and like I say on my podcast all the time, people are more willing to talk to you than you think. Like, it's these people are not as inaccessible as you think they are. Like, most of the time, they may be busy, but if they see someone that's hungry, that's actually putting themselves out there and taking initiative, they're gonna at least talk to them. So don't be afraid to do, like I said before, the unconventional ways of trying to get a job or trying to do anything, because that's how you get the big jobs, is because you're doing something that nobody else is trying to do or afraid to do.
Yeah, no, and so much of that just goes back to asking, just asking straight up, which is, it's something that, like I've already mentioned, I'm not amazing at it, but I've been encouraged to do it a few times throughout my life, and it's always stuck with me. So it's always been something that's like, I should reach out. I should just do it. And there's so many things, like from starting my tech journey, where reaching out, it made all the difference, whether it was meeting the right people or even to get my job. One of the big things that got me my job was because I was playing around with the technology that's really big now, Open AI GPT-3. And I got in on the beta just because I saw the guy, uh, post the beta when they opened, and I just DM'd him and just asked. And so I was one of the first people in, just made a dumb project that wasn't anything, but like it made all the difference that I could talk about that. And it made them think like, oh wow, this is, this person is really trying to look into the cutting edge of this field, or they're really trying to do stuff on their own. And I don't know, there's just so many times that I've seen just reaching out and asking just be such a huge win, such a huge lever to pull on, because people want to help. Like once you get to a place where you're more comfortable, like you just so want to help. Like since I've been hired, like I've still reached back out to other Lambda students and tried to send them jobs and stuff like that, because it's like I care. Like I'm still emotionally, I'm there with them. I know how hard it is. And so yeah, I mean, just reaching out and asking is so important. uh kind of jumping back a little bit, I loved your recent episode about Black Wall Street, which this is like a subject that is a little bit outside of just tech. But of course you had on, I think it was Tyrants, who has black tech
Yep,
students.
Thomas. Yep.
Yeah. And so I'm from Oklahoma originally. I never lived in Tulsa. It was always Oklahoma City. But like you mentioned in that episode, I didn't hear about Black Wall Street until I was like college age or something like that. So it's this crazy history that happened in Oklahoma, this terrible event where, I mean, black people were basically thriving, made like a thriving small economy, and there was like a massacre, but then they also built a highway through, just this terrible history. And I don't know. So I love that you talk about that in the episode, because that's a really important story that should be a national story that's not told
Yeah,
very
man.
much.
Yeah, man. I'm always trying to have conversations that either aren't said enough, because I don't think that topic is really even brought up a lot. Like
Yeah,
I don't think I've even heard people even talk about it on any tech podcasts that I've been on, that I've even heard last several years, at least in my personal opinion. I haven't heard it yet. So I like to have conversations that are hard conversations that need to be said, because like I know like some people are scared to have this conversation because it talks about the people that that are not currently around, but just stuff that really happened, like because I know schools are trying to like erase this type of stuff, like I know
yeah,
there's like bills that are being trying to be passed to say you can't talk about certain things about racism that went on and stuff like that, and I'm like, hey man, like that stuff happened. So people need to know about that stuff. Like, because you can't erase history that happened to like my people. It can't happen. Because if you try to erase history, our future generations aren't going to know about it, and they're gonna be mistakes that are going to be repeated.
yeah,
Maybe
we're
not to the
doomed to
scale of
repeat
what,
it.
yeah, not to maybe not to the scale of what that was,
Hmm.
but still similar things happen. Because I mean, you see all the time. I get people that tell me, man, racism it's not as bad as it was back then. I'm telling you, it's still just as bad. Like if you, I can I can tell you like places exactly in Oklahoma right now where I would not be welcome, or I'd be scared to go to the convenience store, or the local deli, or whatever it is in these small towns, and I would be scared to make it out alive. Just that's just how it is. And people that are so like stuck in like, okay, I'm in a big city, I don't see it. Even the big cities it happens, but when you go to these smaller towns, or you go to the deep south, you go to Mississippi's, the Louisianas, the Georgias, it's still segregated. Like, it still is to this day. So people just gotta just, be educated, and they gotta know their history. There's people that are black that don't know about this stuff. And it's sad when, you got your own people that don't know about that history. Cause I'm like, hey man, like, don't have a conversation with me about this stuff if you don't even know your own history, because it can get you in a lot of trouble one day if you don't know about that stuff. Because you gotta just make sure that you're on your P's and Q's, on your toes. We had the shootings, the police shootings that happen still, that, people say, oh man, this person was a thug or this and that, whatever. And I'm like, hey, if they were white, or they were, Asian or something like that, right? Would you be having the same conversation? Probably not. You
Mhm.
know, why got to be a thug? Why this person got to be this? Because even the media is the same way. You have someone that's a school shooter, and they make them seem like they were a model citizen before they became a shooter. It's like
Yeah,
why are
I've
you?
seen all of those like comparisons, like news clippings, stuff like that. It's
Yeah, like,
crazy.
and yeah, man, it irritates me to no end, man.
No, yeah, and I do got to shout out one person. The one person I've heard talk about this publicly in tech is Isaiah Jackson. He wrote a book called Bitcoin in Black America that's really good. He's on Twitter as Bitcoin Zay, but he talks about all this stuff like Black Wall Street and the redlining, and he kind of tells the story of how like from the economic side, like everything that was
Hmm.
done to like basically oppress everyone except for white people and keep them down,
Yep.
that was one of the biggest levers to use was like the economics. And that's I love it when you say that, like you're talking about building generational wealth. It's like I love that mindset, like thinking about your kids and your kids kids, thinking all the way down the line that you want to build up enough productivity, enough wealth to where you can benefit generations after you. And like that was the promise of Black Wall Street. And just with everything happening in tech, and not just tech, but our whole economy right now is kind of swelling up and things are reorganizing. There's going to be a much different distribution of who people are that can make the biggest impact. Like the internet is making it to where you have the opportunity, like you're saying, that everyone kind of has something that crosses their path. It's like $1 million opportunity that they could stumble into if they just lean into the right ideas or the right inclinations that they have. Those opportunities really exist now. Like it's crazy. It makes sense to be optimistic in a lot of ways, but for me, like what I want to see from young people and like the mindset that I have is like that generational wealth mindset. Like there's a lot of problems to solve. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we need to be like responsible with how we're thinking about this stuff, not just I'm going to get a tech job and move to the biggest city and blow my six-figure salary every year and not be any better because of it, or not help anyone out because of it. And that's kind of the side of tech that I was like repelled from, and I was like, I don't want to be that. I want to live below my means and like just kind of work to make myself more capable to do more things in the future. And I love that's like the same mindset you have, the same kind of stuff you talk about.
Yeah, man, that's a good point you made about like not just working your 9 to 5, making six figures, and then that's it. Because I was talking to a friend actually last night about this as well, and I was telling him, I was like, "Hey, man, like, you know, this year's going by fast. Like, it's already about to be like, I don't know when this episode is going to come out, but we're in about to be in August pretty much, and like, I'm like, man, where'd the year go? Because last year I feel like it was moving so slow, but this year is like really
Yeah.
flying by, and I feel like I haven't really done almost anything. Like I know I have, but it doesn't feel like I have. And like, 10 years gonna fly by like that, and you're gonna be like, man, where'd the time go? And a lot of times people will be in the same exact position. Like I'm sure you got high school friends, they're in the same exact position they were in high school that they are now. And it's kind of sad in a way, because some of these people could be doing so much better for themselves. And I'm always trying to push them. Like I got friends and I'm like always push them like, hey man, like do this, do this, do this. but there's only so much you could do because you can't really motivate people to take action. They either got to do it or they don't. So I always tell people, like, if you got something that you want to do, like I mentioned before, just do it. Because like I know sometimes, like, people think, okay, I got my job and that's it. But like last year we saw with the pandemic, people lost their jobs and people didn't have a backup plan or didn't have like savings or stuff like that because they thought, okay, this is the only income I need. No, you need to have multiple streams of income. Like, this is something that I'm going to tell people over and over when I talk to them. Have
Mhm.
multiple streams of income, have investments, whether that's real estate, whether that's, stocks, crypto, NFTs, if you're into that type of thing. I know that's still blockchain related, but just have investments that will, that you think are worth it for you, that will pay you in the long run. Because we're not teaching our kids this, and I think this is something that we should be teaching all of our kids: is have investments early as possible, because it's going to pay off in the long run, and you're going to be thankful that that you did that for either you or your kids. So and I always think the long game with anything. I don't think where I'm gonna be next year. I think where I'm gonna be 5 years from now, and
Mhm.
everybody got to have that philosophy where maybe you can pivot, like, because obviously you don't know where you're gonna be 5 years from now, but you got to have that roadmap so that you know where you want to be. Because if you don't have goals or know where you're going to be, you're going to be just moving around aimlessly trying to figure out, okay, man, what do I want to do? What can I do next? Because life is going to throw you, curveballs. You're going to get roadblocks on the way. But if you have a plan, you have a game plan, you're never going to go away from that plan because you already know what it is. You may get beat down, you may have to get back up, but you still know exactly what you need to do. You know what you want to do, and it's going to push you on those hardest days, the darkest hours when you want to give up, because you have that plan, as opposed to someone that maybe doesn't have that plan. They get kicked down, and it takes them, a year, 2 years, maybe 3 years to get back up. Because I've had times like that where it took me, 3 years to get back up because I had a plan, but then I didn't have a plan because everything that I thought I could do, I couldn't do anymore. So, you got to just, have some type of plan in place. Like I said, you can always pivot and change your plan along the way, but just having a plan is important because a lot of people don't have that. If you talk to most people that work at like 9 to 5 jobs, they just, like I said, like you mentioned, they just have that mentality where they got to work, 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 and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I love what you're saying there. For me, like a huge motivator, for years before I had this job, I was a delivery driver in Oklahoma City. And so I would see both the sides of like the businesses, the 9 to 5 businesses, people working in cubicles, where I had never had a job like that. But I also saw, like the really lowly apartments where people never leave and they're hoarders and, they're addicts or whatever. And both of those kind of seemed like terrifying to me in different ways, because what I saw were people that were truly like aimless and they were hurting because of it. Like I saw that so much, and it almost left this impression on me that like so few people end up okay. Like even the people that we would say, oh, they have good jobs in our economy, like I would see them and they didn't. It's like I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that, the same that I don't want to be the person that doesn't have a job right now, that's maybe living off welfare or whatever. Like um but it just gave me kind of a respect that like it's, you got to have something going, you got to have a motivator, you got to have a direction to be, and you got to keep on moving, because as soon as you stop, I don't know, everyone I see that has stopped, they just get stuck, they get so stuck. And I've just seen too many examples of that, friends, family, and for me it just keeps me moving, it keeps me going. Like I don't know, I don't want to waste away, because you're going to get knocked down anyway. Like you said, you get knocked down for a few years pretty easily. Like stuff happens with your family, stuff happens with your job, your health. And so, just having that mindset that like I'm not just going to sit down here and rot. Like I'm going to keep on going, I'm going to keep on moving. I have dreams, I have goals. And that's something that I really feel is leaving for a lot of young people. Like it's not cool, or it's not something about like being ambitious or wanting to do a lot, wanting to make an impact is like people are almost turned off from it now. Maybe that's just my perspective, but it's something that I think is so important for the individual and for the collective. Um, and so I love getting to talk to anyone like you who's just like living this life. Like it's great.
Yeah, man. I love it. Like when I talk to people that have like a similar mindset as me,
Uh-huh.
because like, or even people that don't, like it's interesting to hear from their perspective as well. Because like I feel like I'm on that one friend that like if you talk to me, you're gonna be like at least motivated. Like you may not take action. Like I got friends all the time, and they'll be honest with me. It's like, hey man, I'm not motivated to make money. I'm like, that's cool, I appreciate your honesty, because some people like they'll tell you exactly why they haven't moved on, and then nothing wrong with this, by the way.
Mhm.
Like if you want to stay doing what you're doing, that's cool, because some people they want that comfort and they want to be where they're at, and but it's rare to have friends that will tell you exactly that though. And I got a couple of friends that will tell me they're like, hey man, like I got about to have a family, I'm kind of cool where I'm at. I know why I'm not where I want to be, but and I always tell them to say, hey man, like I appreciate you as a friend, and our conversations. I know it's not for everybody, because and I also tell people this as well. It's like entrepreneurship is another thing that I think more people should do. Everybody can't do it though. Like, because I tell people all the time, entrepreneurship is the hardest thing ever. Trying to start a business is probably the hardest thing you'll ever do. But if you do it, it's going to be rewarding for you, because like you're going to learn so much about yourself trying to start a business that you never knew before, because like you'll get better people skills, you'll be able to have better problem solving skills, you'll actually be able to do something that you want to do that's fun. And I tell people all the time, like, do stuff that you want to do that's fun. Like even if it's something that you're not trying to make a whole lot of money, if you can make an extra $200 $300 doing it, do it,
Mhm.
because that's $200 or $300 you could put into an index fund, or you can put into crypto or something like that. And 10 years down the road, that $200 $300 could balloon to $10,000 or something like that. And you're like, man, I'm glad I started putting this money into something that could help me and help my family. And 10,000, if you have 10,000, it could turn to 100,000. Because I've seen people that started with $10,000 in their investments, and it turned to 100,000 like almost overnight. Like, not, obviously not overnight, but in 2 or 3 years, it got to
Yeah,
that
yeah,
point.
2 3 years.
Yeah. So people just got to just, start doing that stuff, man. Like you may not see a lot of progress right away, but if you put in the work, and eventually over time, it's going to all compound and pay off. Like you may not see the results right away, but if you have friends, they will tell you. Like, cause like I always, like when I do any type of stuff, even my podcast now, they're like, man, I see the growth. I see where you were at and where you are now. And they even tell me all the time, like, man, interviewing is your thing. Like that's the one thing that you're really good at. And anytime someone tells you what you're really good at, and multiple people tell you that, then you got to double down on that no matter what. That's
Yeah.
why like all of this year I'm just focusing on putting out as much content that's podcast related as possible, because I know if I do that right now, 2 or 3 years down the road, who knows where I'll be at, but it's going to be a much better position than I am right now. So I tell all the listeners, if you got a skill that and a lot of times people never figure out what that skill is that they're really good at, because if you know what you're really good at, the sky's the limit for you, because someone's willing to pay you for it if people are telling you that to your face.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Like that's the feedback that anyone's looking for, or the at least the information that everyone's looking for. In a lot of ways, I still don't know what I'm really good at. People think I'm good at certain things. Like people think my wife thinks I'm really the most technical person in the world. But I'm like, listen, you don't see these people I work with. Like this, it's cool. It's not my thing. I'm not the world-class programmer. That's fine. But and you're kind of like, oh, I like this. I'm good at this, and I kind of like this. And you're not totally certain, but it's like you gotta try stuff. You gotta make iterations, and then eventually to be able to get to the point like you're saying, where people give you such clear feedback that like, man, this is really valuable. This really seems like something that was made for you. that's great. That's exactly where you're trying to get. So man, that's so cool to hear. I'm definitely excited about your podcast and to keep up with it's Hackspot, right? Hackspot.tv.
Hackspot is the reality show I'm working on. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like I said, it's like the culmination of everything I've ever done up to this point. Because like it's gonna change a lot of people's lives. Like I think the hard thing about doing some of what I'm doing with that competition is that nobody's ever done it. Like I've never heard anyone do anything like it. Because I go to meetups all the time, and I kind of like my thing is like it's some this one idea that I've been working on for the last 12 months now, probably longer than that, but at least 12 months since the pandemic started. So, and I always like to try to test like if people are interested in the idea, because I think this is important for anyone who's listening. If you have an idea, kind of like give people kind of softball question that you can ask them to kind of see if it's a viable idea, because sometimes people, come up with an idea, right? And not all ideas are good. Like a lot of ideas that we come up with are bad. Like, they're just not good ideas. But if you kind of have like a similar response rate on a lot of things that you're asking, and they're saying, okay, this hasn't been done before, or they're interested, they think it's cool. And if they're not your friends, by the way, I never ask friends about stuff like this, because I think asking your friends, you'll never get the real feedback you want. But if you go to meetups and
Yeah.
you talk to random strangers, and you kind of like just don't really give them everything that you're doing, but enough that they can kind of get a general idea of what you're trying to do. You can kind of test your idea first to see if it's something that's viable that you should actually pursue. Because I think another thing is people think, oh man, like you're creating a reality show, but how are you going to be able to produce this? It's going to cost a lot of money. No, I mean it's going to cost me some money. Like it's going to cost me probably thousands of dollars just to start something like this. But I'm going to be real low budget to trying to see if like people really would clamor for something like that's like a higher production where I'm
Yeah.
actually going to do in person and spend a month like in a house with other people, and really be like kind of like a hackathon slash what's the word I'm trying to think of, like a social experiment in a way,
Yeah.
where it's kind of like I don't know if you ever remember Real World or Making the Band. I don't know if you remember that show. It'd be kind of like a lot of
Yeah.
those shows with the mix of American Idol, The Voice, Shark Tank, all mixed into one.
Hmm.
Because I think one thing I noticed, especially my podcast, is people love the interactions that are natural. And I think something like this would be like a lot of unexpected things that would happen. And also it'd be something where people that are in tech would be able to learn a lot, because I'll be bringing a lot of value for everybody involved, whether that's the contestants, or whether that's the people that are watching, or the people that are participating, whether that's the judges or the mentors or people that that are trying to help these people. Because I think if you can do something that will help people, all parties involved, is something that really is something that I think can be impactful. And hopefully down the road we can get a studio behind a major production, whatever. But right now, like I tell people all the time, just put the stuff out. Like, don't matter how you do it, because if you look at anything that was put day one, it is completely different than how it is now. Like if you look at Shark Tank or American Idol or Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram, all those major apps, TikTok, all those apps, they started small, and they just kind of just built on each other and became, some of the biggest apps in the world today, or biggest shows today. So, just start taking action, just do it. And like stuff will happen. Like if it's a good enough idea, like it's gonna work out. So if I've been saying this over and over, but just take action today.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's a good message. Really, really to leave on. Like I want everyone to keep in mind hackspot.tv between two divs to go check out your stuff. I appreciate you coming on and just like talking about this and talking so raw with me. It was great. Do you have anything else to plug? Anything else you're working on?
No, I think those are like the two main things I'm really working on. Is if you're a developer, I know by the time this airs, I probably won't accept applications for it. But if you were trying to get on the Hackspot, just reach out to me. You either go on that website or go to you just email me at cam@betweentwodivs.com if you want to reach out to me that way. If you have any questions, you can also reach out to me on my email as well. You also can reach out to me on my Twitter. Cam Perry 21. Anyone who knows me, I know Austin knows me pretty well on there. I'm on Twitter a lot, so if you hit me up on there, I'm probably gonna reach out to you. So don't be afraid to be a stranger and reach out, man, because I'm willing to help anybody if you have a question or you just want to chat.
Sweet. Sweet. Great. Well, thank you for everyone for listening. Thanks for coming on, Cam. And till next time, we'll see you.